guys. This is our study session concerning the interview process for the police chief job coming up. Joe Porcerelli asked for this session, so we put it on. And I guess the best place to start is why are we here? Why are we changing what normally is done with police and their interview process? And I'm just going to run through what was brought to my attention or I thought of as to why we needed to do this a little bit different than is normal. And the normal, everybody knows, the way the police commission does it is that whole commission does the interview for a job. No other commission that I know of does that. They actually do it the way this proposal is, which is to have a committee do the interviews and bring a candidate forward to the commission who does a recommendation to the board. That being said, we propose to do it this way because, first of all, over this year, the police commission has had a real trouble meeting the Open Meetings Act. Their police chief interviews and a grievance that they handled violated the Open Meetings Act a number of times. Also, people believe, it was brought to my attention and I saw it myself, that there seems to be a favoritism, and I'm going to say a perceived favoritism, of one of the candidates in this upcoming package. And Derek, can you just tell me, is there 19 or 20 in the package?
I believe there are 20.
20. So one of the applicants seemed to be showed favoritism by the commission or some of the commissioners. Also, some of the commissioners or a commissioner had said on a couple of occasions that the police chief had to be an internal pick, not be an external person. With saying all that, we have a group of 20 people that applied for this job, which I'm very happy about, and we all should be happy that 20 people want our police chief job. Some of those are internal people, some of those are external people. Based on what was said and what was done, we were concerned with it being a fair process. And thus, the proposal and the way it was put out to this point, because I am going to recommend a change, is that Derek put a group of 3 people together to do the vetting and interviewing, that they would put forth a candidate to the police commission. The police commission would get to make their recommendation, and their recommendation would go to the board for voting. I talked to Mr. Jarecki. I talked to some of the other board members today. I have been able to come up with an alternative for that because Mike, I know, wasn't happy with that. I'm going to guess maybe Joe wasn't, but he didn't actually state that to me. So I don't want to speak for him. So the alternative, unless I hear from a majority of the board different, what we will do is Derek and his group will do the vetting and the interviews, and we'll put forth 3 candidates to the police commission. The police commission will interview those people and make a recommendation. And that recommendation could be thumbs up or thumbs down to any of them. And that will be brought to the board. So that's how we're going to proceed. They can also do something over and above that as a commission if they wished.
Jim, just to clarify,
Yes.
over and above that would be if for whatever reason, I'll just say for whatever reason, we perceive that those three candidates aren't the best candidates for the position, then we can look at past candidates.
No, you will be looking at a current candidate.
Well,
you would be looking, based on our discussion, a current candidate.
okay, so somebody that maybe not
Somebody else in the
those
pack.
three.
It'd have to be somebody else in the package.
So, okay, of people that have applied.
People that have applied.
We
Correct.
could pick anybody.
You
but
can, yes.
They're going to provide a service to screen and kind of a first line interview and
Yes.
provide their first three candidates.
Their top three candidates, not their first three, their top three.
Their top three, yeah.
And the commission will do something with that.
Right.
And they will bring that forward. And it might be, as you discussed and we discussed this morning, it might be that you come forward and say, you know, we don't think any of those three candidates are good enough. And so we recommend none of them be hired. And then you would bring a separate action for somebody you thought that the committee didn't bring forward to you. You would go with somebody else.
Okay. So is it 3 or 4?
It's 3.
And if Derek found 4 in his group, and they said,
Well, if
magically close.
if
okay
Derek might,
no
you know,
less than 3.
yeah, no less than 3. Yeah, if he finds 6 that are just top notch.
Okay.
You know.
So let me just tell you where my head's at, and this is kind of a very recent development. Like today, late today. I just, from my perspective, if we look at 6710, I think if we look at this as a one-time exception to 6710 and the last, 40, closer to 50 than 40 years, the way this has been conducted, then, it's something that I can't speak for the commission, but I would take the perspective that, it's something we need to really seriously consider and discuss. Okay. Hopefully, we have a little time to make that decision. I do disagree though, with the premise that, at least the inference of what you're saying about the Opens Meeting Act. I mean, this act, we conducted those interviews and grievances the way they've been conducted for the last 30 years, period. And they have always been, pretty much in secret if candidates desired for those interviews to be in secret. The good thing about the police commission, we made a mistake.
Can I just make it, and I apologize for interrupting, Mike. I just, as the township attorney, I have to suggest to all of you that you consider highly not discussing whether or not the police commission violated the Open Meetings Act.
Is for the commission, the management team, and the board to all embrace the final candidate. We just work much better as a team that way. But I would like to caution one thing. Again, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for the commission because I really haven't covered this with the commission. I think we just got to take a brief look at history. And at least as long as I've been here on the commission, as a member or as a liaison, I've only seen us circumvent 6710 one time. And, you know, other than that, I think 6710, when we followed it both in spirit and word and practice, has delivered us some extremely great chiefs of police. When we haven't, the most recent time, back in 18, the township departed from this process. And, you know, we've recently found ourselves not number one in safety for communities 10,000 and over, but we now find ourselves a chief for almost a year. In the process of working together, you know, it's something, you know, that, like I said, I think needs to be considered. I can't speak for the commission right now, but I think a one-time variation to this process is something that I could support, as you described it, Jim, and as we, I think, just agreed. Okay, that's kind of where.
Derek, isn't one of the commissioners going to be on your group?
Just for reference, the group that we're looking at is going to be myself, Brian Friel, looking at a member of the police commission to be part of that group, and then looking at a retired chief from a different department, not from Groseal Township, to be part of that group as well. So it'd actually be a 4-member panel. And the purpose of having the retired police chief there is to, actually, it was a suggestion that Trustee Porcerelli had mentioned, to make sure that we have somebody that's part of that panel to voice their opinion about whether that individual, the person we're interviewing, has the capabilities, the qualifications to do a job that they're aware of what it takes, basically. And originally we had looked at Brent being part of that group, but he had voiced some concerns about, you know, one of the candidates and whether there'd be a conflict. So he had removed himself from that consideration. So that's what we're looking at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Jim, I just have a couple follow-ups of Mr. Assorti. Tom, can you hear me okay? Okay. I guess I'm asking probably Tom this, but are you or Jim, are you familiar? Explain to me that a public body is something and a subcommittee is something else. Are you familiar with any case law where a subcommittee acted as a public body? And when I say acted, they made decisions the same that the public body would. So this group, I think you stated, Jim, there was 20 applicants, and let's just say you go down to 4. That's a decision-making body. Tom, are you familiar with anything that's gone to court to show that this is a public body and they do have to conform to the Open Meetings Act?
Well, apparently you do. And so if you could cite me the cases, I'd be happy to look at them. But Joe, you're always free to get a hold of me ahead of time rather than, you know, at a public meeting out in the public. I know there are all kinds of cases, and unfortunately you're confusing a public body with a decision-making authority with a particular group. So you're confusing and mixing terms that don't mean the same thing. So okay. A subcommittee can be a public body subject to the Open Meetings Act. It happens frequently. I'm sure there are at least, I know there's dozens, if not 100 cases along those lines. So if we want to start going through them, we can, but I'm not sure. So your question is this group a subcommittee with decision-making authority? And the answer is no, because they're not hiring any of these individuals or making a recommendation to hire any of these individuals.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. I'm sorry. Go ahead. It's a completely different situation. It happens all the time in municipalities that you have a group of administrative staff that
interview individuals for positions within the township, city, village, whatever you have. The exception would be that you'd have a full committee take a look at them, except maybe for something like this, when you'd have a police chief or a township manager or something along those lines.
So let me ask a question. Uta, I know you're ahead of me, so go ahead. All right, I just have a follow-up question for clarity. So the police commission, we get our candidates, whoever they are, certainly the 3 or 4 that are recommended. We interview them in public. You know, that's the right thing to do. You know, and then we make a recommendation to the board.
Right.
Simple process. It's in the public. The public gets to see the pros and cons of each of these candidates, which I believe is a great thing, especially in this day and age where, you know, there's so many things that are so much more important and critical about public safety and the challenges that we face. The downside is, well, so Derek's group, they're also going to interview candidates. And like the police, theirs will be in private. And like the police commission, they're also going to make a recommendation. Are they making a recommendation to the police commission? Or are they making a recommendation to the board as well?
They're going to make a recommendation to they're not actually making a recommendation.
Exactly. They're not making a recommendation, and they're not a decision-making body. They're reading through people. If you had a community, you know, a larger community where every time somebody was hired, you had to go through all this, it wouldn't practically work. They have to be a decision-making body is the case law on it.
Okay. So, but if they were making a recommendation, it'd be a problem, is what you're saying.
If they're making a decision, it would be a problem.
Candidates.
Jim, the operative word, I think that Tom used the word weeding, but essentially the administrators are doing a sorting process. You have a large number of candidates. It would be cumbersome to interview and go through the entire process in an open body, which if you were a police commission, rec commission, airport commission, and you were doing the interviews, you'd have to do all of them in an open session. There'd be no doubt about that. But if you assign the task to your administrative staff, they can cut through that process and as Tom said, weed out or sort out the best candidates to put forward, thus saving you time and energy. And when those candidates come before the public body, then the interviews have to be in a public meeting.
Okay.
If the board decided to do interviews.
And that's if all 5 or the majority of your commission is doing the interviews. If only 2 of you were doing the interviews, you could be in that room just like Derek would be. So it's not that they're commissioners, it's a matter of how many commissioners are involved. And that's just because of the Open Meetings Act, because it applies and says.
If you make a quorum,
it's got to be a quorum.
Then
Right.
there you go.
We got it. Okay, so they give us 4 candidates and say, guys, we screened a bunch, we've interviewed them, not necessarily in the public, whatever. You guys take a look at them. Whoever we interview, we do in the public if it's a quorum,
Right.
which it will be, because we will make that decision and we will make a recommendation. But just for clarity's sake, I just want to make sure that group, when they get done interviewing, they are not making a recommendation to the board. They're only providing the police commission with candidates. After their screening, interviewing process.
Then they're done.
Okay.
They're done.
That's what it is.
You will now deal with that group of 3, 4, whatever, and say to the board, here's our decision on this group.
So this is much different than your December 2nd letter to me.
But if you do that process in a private meeting or in a closed session, then you are in violation. So when the police commission does any interviews with those candidates, your obligation is to do it again in a public meeting. And that I wanted to segue into my question, because the other thing that the administrative committee, as well as any board or commission, should be doing in an interview process is an equal process, so that all candidates have an equal opportunity and are asked the same questions, are given the same tasks, are given the same possibilities, and that you don't tailor make an interview for the candidate. And it's really important in fair hiring that those rules are followed. I see Tom nodding, and I think that's really important for us to state, is that no matter who does the interviewing, that all the candidates have an equal opportunity and an equal playing field, that no one knows questions in advance, that nobody knows, what you're looking for or what you're not looking for.
Or you're asking different questions.
Or you're asking different questions. The context and the questions have to be the same.
On the different questions, now, on the different, let me just finish. On the different questions, sometimes the way someone answers a question, because they all answer them differently, can lead to more questions. But
that's correct.
You're not limited to, here's my 10 questions, here's 10.
That's fine.
But essentially, you're asking the same type of questions.
Right.
Right.
Well, and you can alter your follow-up questions based on the answer the candidate gives, but you really should be asking the same first questions of all the candidates.
Real quickly here, we have 3 people that haven't talked yet, and we're running out of time in this study session. So, Jameson, you had your hand up. I'd like to get you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I wanted to confirm the subcommittee. Yep, that might not be the right term. The group.
Yeah, that's good.
Will be Derek Bryan, a retired chief who's not from Grosse Ile, and a police commission member.
Derek, is that correct?
That is accurate, yes.
Okay. Then the other thing I would like to see would be from this committee. I think they are kind of making a decision, and maybe it doesn't rise to the level of being a legal decision, as Mr. Assorti had said, but they're removing people from the police commission's purview. So they're filtering the candidates, and that may be perfectly legal. But I, for one, would like to be able to see what the subcommittee or lesser commission or group did. So I think there should be a report that comes out of it listing all of the candidates and why the decisions were made to present these 3, 5, whatever candidates to the police commission. There should be a mechanism of accountability for the subcommittee.
Derek, don't you have that?
I can explain a little bit the process.
Yeah, if you would, please, because that is what the township manager has done in the past. That's what they did with the latest DPS hire. Much different than just saying, here's our recommendation, board.
And
they actually had a package with
too.
exactly what you're talking about.
So what happens is all the members of the group, they get copies of the applications, and we usually remove the names off of the applications. We then rank the applicants from 1 to, let's say, 20 in this case, individually, without conversing with each other about our preferences for individual candidates, so that we're all unspoiled as far as our opinions are concerned. We then take our rankings and we put them together, and we use those rankings to develop a consensus 1 through 20. At that point, we choose to interview how many of we select to interview. Let's say it's 6 in this case, if that's our choice. Based upon that consensus list, that aggregate total, we'll pick 1 through 6 and interview those candidates moving forward. At that point, let's say we're narrowing it down to 3. We'll, after the interviews, get together and make a decision as far as what the consensus is for the top 3, and that would be the 3 that we would put forward. So all those rankings would be available. Individualized rankings and the consensus rankings would be available for your review. And that's usually how we proceed with the process. That was the process we used for the airport manager position that you're reviewing tonight. That was the process that we used for the airport maintenance position that you're reviewing tonight. And that has been the process, at least as long as I have been here, for positions I've been involved in. I can't speak to other ways that it was done in the past because I wasn't part of it, but that has been my experience.
Okay.
And it's also
do
the
you-
process I've used, previous to Grow Zeal and other occupations.
Quickly, before I go back to somebody that's talked already, David and Carl, you haven't had anything to say. Do you have anything to say?
Well, I mean, I agree with the proposal that's been put out today. I talked with Mr. Drecky this morning, mid-afternoon, and we talked about this particular process. I think it leaves the police commission active in the decision process. I think it vets out, or through that vetting process, you can, if you've got 20 candidates, my feeling, it's probably going to be pretty easy, I don't want to say to eliminate 7 or 8, because they're not all going to come out as being ranked number 1. So I think in order to get it down pretty much to a workable level, which is what the interview committee will do, and then take their top 3, top 4, send those names to the committee. It's not a recommendation to hire. It's not, it's just, here's
our top 4
ones that we think are the best possible candidates. And then it gets turned over to the commission, and the interview committee goes back to their daily routine.
Could the police commission not do the same thing where they review packets, decide these 5 people are the best, and then interview them? I mean, they're not beholden to interview all 20 people. They could do the same thing. They'd just be reviewing packets in an open meeting.
If I recall, the police commission was asked to follow that process at the beginning of this process. Mr. Supervisor made an outline to the commission of what he thought the expectations of the process would be. The reason I raised my hand is the process that Derek outlined was actually the process used to hire Derek. It was the
Correct.
process used to hire Brian Friel. It's the process we use to hire every management position that we have in the last 10 plus years.
And non-management. And
non-managers. And on top of that, you're asking the administrative team to provide transparency for their process. And I think that's excellent. And that is what they do and are prepared to do and have always done. We're asking that the police commission do the same thing. And as I recall, they were asked to do the same thing during this process. So everybody that makes these recommendations or does a sorting or screening or whatever should be prepared to defend and explain their decisions pro and con, and not just come out with only one candidate. They should be prepared to explain their ranking or their decision. And I'm sorry if I busted in there, but
that's okay.
We're
Joe's going to be the last one because we're after 7. We have to go.
I just
So
have
go
one more
ahead.
comment.
Jim, I'm sorry, I didn't
This
get to
one's
finish
important.
something here. Tom, just so you know, that opinion that I got was from an attorney from the Michigan Townships Association, just so you know, that's where I got that from. That he's the one that stated if it goes down, they do any decision-making at all, just so you know that. But we can
Yeah,
talk about
absolutely.
Yeah.
I would agree with that 100%. If they are a decision-making body under the Open Meetings Act, they're required to have it in closed session.
Right. He explained though.
Excuse me.
Open.
Open section.
Yeah, no, I get it. He explained, Tom, to me, just so you know, that if they're even knocking down, I thought we only had 15 applicants. And I explained to him we had 15. He said, if you're knocking down 15 to 1, it's a decision making. I'm just letting you know where I got it from. The second thing, Derek, real quick, can you let us know who that police chief is? And is the police commissioner Eric Ranka by chance?
Derek, you're on mute.
I can't tell you who that retired chief is because I'm in the process of soliciting that right now, and that individual that we have in mind has not confirmed that they're willing to participate. But we'll let you know who that is.
We'll know before anything starts happening, Joe.
The concern
On
I
both
have,
issues, Derek? Both
the concern I
positions?
have is we have retired chiefs that have written letters of recommendation for some of the candidates that we have. So we have to make sure that that retired chief has not indicated support for a candidate that we have in the
Okay.
pool, which we've identified that person. I just have to make sure that they're willing, and it sounds like they are, but I just haven't gotten that confirmed. So we can
Okay.
talk offline about that.
All right,
Individual
police
from the
commissioner, Eric?
Correct.
Okay.
And the reason being, I think that there was some concern expressed with the commissioners that were part of the conversation in October about the internal versus external candidate. I think there were some concerns expressed that, that could be interpreted as any other member wouldn't be giving any kind of fair shake to an external candidate after all the comments were made about the internal candidates. Eric was not part of that meeting. I think he was out of town, and hadn't been part of that conversation. So I believe that's why Eric was viewed as, the most reasonable candidate when it came to the group.
Quickly, Mike, you wanted to make one
Just
more.
one quick point. Okay, since the interviews at the police commission are going to be televised, then if you have the restriction
Well, I don't know that they're going to be televised.
well, okay, they'll be in the open.
They will be in the, if your whole commission is doing it,
Well,
yes. they
I
will be-
prefer them not to be televised, and I'll tell you, I don't have a problem with it, because I'd like the public to see it, but here's the issue. If you don't interview all the same candidates on the same day, then other ones get to see what the questions are, and we're cheating on the
Watch the
test.
reruns,
right?
yeah.
So,
Right.
I mean, they'll be very similar, but I'm not making any commitment towards that. And by the way, again, I have to convince the individual commissioners if they want to run with this. I'm just speaking for myself,
I understand.
but I will
And-
turn that around as quickly as I can.
And I will make the last comment here because we have to break to get to our regular meeting. But it is as some of you, if not all of you, know, there are on occasion Mike and I don't agree on things, and we had a heated but a good discussion, and we've come out to agree on this, and it is. I think we both agreed, both of us, all of us, what we want is the best for the township. We may look at it differently, but we believe that everybody wants the best for the township. So with that, here's what it'll be. With this, it'll be Derek and his group vetting, doing interviews, coming up with his top candidates and giving that to the commission to do their interviews. We will do that. If anyone thinks it should not be that way, please contact me and let me know. And if we get a majority of this board that says no, don't do it that way, then we'll find another way. But I think this will work. All right. And with that, let's take a couple minutes break and get ready for our regular meeting. And we just have a few action items to go over, so it should be very quick.
Right.
All right, thanks, guys and lady.